Carolina had their second worst three-point shooting percentage in program history last season. If they want their woes to stop, they're going to have to fix that number this year.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's July 12th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for joining us to get your team every single day. Coming up on the show today, we're going to talk about this three-point shooting percentage, but I also want to talk about some voting that the Locked On ACC hosts did, and I've got some tidbits for you about baseball and some more updates on James Okonkwo. So let's start right there with that three-point shooting percentage. I want to look back at what Carolina did last year, and then I want to look ahead at what we could kind of hope for or expect for this upcoming season. So 2022-23 last year, and as a reminder, the three-point shot has been fully in place since the 86-87 season. Last year, Carolina shot 234 of 751 from the three-point line. That is a 31.2 percentage. Where do you think that ranks? Hint, hint, it's pretty stinking low. Yes. In fact, the only season that it was lower was the 2019-20 season when Carolina shot 30.4% on 595 attempts. That was the season that ended with COVID. Carolina technically didn't miss the tournament because, it got canceled. But you notice a trend there? The two lowest shooting three-point percentages in program history came in the last 4 years, both of which were seasons in which the Tar Heels either didn't make the tournament or wouldn't have made the tournament if it happened in that year. And obviously, attempts are up because this is what happens in college basketball. Now the Tar Heels attempted 751 last year. The only seasons with more attempts were 02-03, 16-17, 17-18, 18-19, and 21-22. So this was the fifth most attempts in history of the UNC program, with the second worst three-point percentage. You feeling what I'm putting down here? The Tar Heels, there's a trend. 2 of the last 4 years have 2 of the 4 worst shooting percentages in program history, and in those 2 years didn't make the tournament. That has to improve this upcoming season in order for the Tar Heels to, succeed. And this is where the game is going. This is where Coach Hubert Davis seems to want to go. So how are the Tar Heels going to remedy these issues? Well, let's look at some of what happened last year. In terms of individuals, there were 3 players with 100 or more three-point attempts last year. They were Caleb Love, the only Tar Heel to take more than 200 attempts last year, was 73 of 244, or 29.9%. That's not very good. Second on the Tar Heels in attempts last year was RJ Davis, who was 63 of 174, 36.2%. And you got to imagine it would have been a good deal higher were it not for his messed up finger last season. And then third most attempts on the team last year was Pete Nance, who shot 32 of 100 for an even 32%. The next 3 Tar Heels in terms of attempts were Leaky, Puff Johnson, and DeMarco Dunn. So what do you notice about those 6 names, the 6 most attempted three-pointers last year for the Tar Heels? Caleb Love, not a Tar Heel anymore. RJ Davis, still a Tar Heel. I mean, all of these guys are always going to be Tar Heels, but I just mean who they're playing for this upcoming season. Pete Nance, off to the pros. Leaky Black, off to the pros. Puff Johnson, transfer. DeMarco Dunn, transfer. Meaning only 1 Tar Heel out of the top 6 in terms of attempts is returning. Now, thankfully for the Tar Heels, it is the guy who shot the highest percentage last year of those 6, and that's RJ Davis. So that is encouraging. In fact, of those 751 attempts the Tar Heels had last year, here's how many of those are coming back. RJ's 174 attempts, Jalen Washington's 7 attempts, Armando Bacot's 6, Seth Trimble's 6, Creighton Lebo's 1, and Rob Landry's 1. That means Carolina is returning 195 of their 751 three-point attempts, which works out to just 26%. Now, you might look at that and say, oh man, that's not good. But keep in mind, that is from a team that shot the second worst three-point percentage in program history. So I'm here to say that it is a good thing that Carolina has lost so many of their three-point attempts from last year. You tracking with me on that? Yeah, you should be. And in fact, Carolina only returns one player who took more than 7 three-point attempts last season. Total, not per game. Total. And that's RJ Davis. Again, what I believe is a good thing. In fact, RJ Davis and Seth Trimble are the only two returning returning Tar Heels who made a 3 last year. RJ made 63, Seth made 1. That's where things are at. But here's what I am hopeful is to be the good news. Carolina brings in a whole host of guys who have taken a lot more attempts and have often been more successful. Because again, keep in mind, it's not just attempts, it's makes, percentage, all of that. So again, last year, Caleb Love took the most attempts by far and had an under 30% percentage. So you're looking for guys, even if the volume's not there, maybe the percentage is there. Or if the percentage is a little bit lower, maybe the volume's there so you get more return on that investment. But obviously, ultimately, you want the three-point attempts and the three-point percentage to be up. So in terms of who's coming in, think about this. Joining RJ Davis is Cormac Ryan, who's never attempted fewer than 125 threes in his career. And outside of, kind of 1 year, shot well. Jalen Withers has attempted in his 3 years so far 21, 64, and 96 threes. Paxson Wojcik didn't have as many attempts his first couple of years, 19 and 10, but then the last 2 years, his junior and senior years at Brown, 115 and 150 attempts. Harrison Ingerman, his 2 years at Stanford, 115 and 113 attempts. You bring in Elliot Cadeau, who, again, people make, myself included, have made such a big deal about what he can do passing the ball. But often we haven't talked about that he is a very strong, solid outside shooter, and he's going to bring that to Carolina. Zayden High should be able to shoot outside. Maybe we won't see a ton of that early, but I expect it. James Okonkwo transferring in won't do much. He only had 6 attempts total in his 2 years at West Virginia and didn't make any of them. But obviously, all of these guys aren't going to be able to shoot as many threes as they have in recent years for their programs where they're transferring in from. Although, I think as you lose Caleb's 244 attempts, is that what the number was? Yeah, 244 attempts. There's a lot more to go around, and that makes Carolina as a team hopefully more dangerous this season. You know what I mean? Because it's not just reliant on RJ or whomever it is. It's RJ and Cormac Ryan and Jalen Withers and Paxson Wojcik and Harrison Ingram and Elliot Cadeau. Lots of guys capable of doing this. Heck, I hope Seth Trimble is able to do more. Jalen Washington able to do more. But at the end of the day, the Tar Heels have to be better than last year's 31.2%. You really, really hope that as a team, they could get up closer to 35% on their three-point attempts. That's kind of that threshold, that benchmark that I'm looking for. That is to me going to show the level of success that the Tar Heels are going to have. Because again, two of the last 4 years have been the lowest 2 years in program history. And those 2 years, they did not make the NCAA tournament or wouldn't have in the 1920 season. So got to get it up to 35-ish% is what I would like to see. So these guys coming in, plus RJ Davis, plus Jalen Washington and others, should make for a hopefully more successful season. Well, we looked yesterday at John Rothstein's ACC offseason breakdown. Well, wouldn't you know it, the hosts of the ACC at our Locked On Network have done something similar, have looked at where they would rank the ACC basketball programs right now. We're going to take a look at that in just a second. But first, friends, this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Folks, take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet 20 bucks and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's 200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over under to who's going to hit the first home run in a game. Crazy things happen, like last night, the National League won their first All-Star game in like the last 10 games. If I'm you, I'm going out on a futures bet for the Braves, my baseball team, because they are killing it, and hopefully get Max Fried back after the All-Star game. Let me know your thoughts on that. All of this comes on an app that's safe, it's secure, and it's super easy to use. Plus, when you win with FanDuel, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks. Thanks so much for joining us here on Locked On Tar Heels. I know you were expecting our guy Pat Kilby today. We had some schedule changes, so he's going to be on tomorrow's show. We will be previewing Zayden High, so make sure you join us for that. By the way, for all you listeners and all your great listener questions that come in, we've got a great new way you can submit questions, videos. That way you get to be part of the show, your face, your voice. All you got to do, submit a 10 to 15 second video, your name, where you're from, and your question. And you can send that in to lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Okay, the hosts of Locked On have brought in, we were asked to do some voting, some polls where we voted specifically on ACC schools, a variety of topics, things about football, who's got the best offense, the best defense, the best coach, all of those things. But it wasn't just football related, it was athletics programs overall. And the question we want to tackle today is who has the best what's the word I'm looking for here? Basketball program right now. That's the intriguing thing about this. Who right now has the best basketball program? So we're ranking all 15 basketball programs right now. So this is a fun concept for this summer that we're going to be doing at Locked On. And so what I want to do is unfurl one of these each week for you for the coming time. I believe there were 9 or so different polls. And so this is the first one. Rank all 15 ACC basketball programs right now. Now, if you were with us yesterday, you everydayers are going to remember this. We looked at John Rothstein's kind of off-season power rankings for the ACC. And so I'm really curious to see in kind of real time how these rankings compare to the Rothstein ones we looked at yesterday. And then we'll kind of get some takeaways from this. This is going to be a fun new concept for us for this year here on Locked On Tar Heels. So bear with me and let's get right into talking about this whole thing. All right. As you look at it, I'm going to take my picture and move it off to the side here. I'm not doing that very well right now. I'm just going to remove it. How about that? No, you can't see it. It's not good, but I'll just let you know how it's looking. I apologize for that, everybody. Technology is not doing what it's supposed to be right now. Let me give it to you starting at 15 and working all the way up to number 1. And remember, this is right now. It's not historical. It's not looking into the future. It's where do the hosts, the ACC hosts of the Locked On Network, feel the ACC basketball programs are at right now. And it's a very similar list, but man, interestingly, it's Louisville that's number 15, the worst program in the conference. Yikes. that's rough. The next several from 11 to 14 are basically the same, that have been bottom dwellers for a while now. 14 is Georgia Tech, 13 Boston College, 12 Notre Dame, 11 Pitt. And so looking at that bottom five, I think Louisville is going to trend up. They've made a lot of good moves this offseason. I think it depends on what Coach Kenny Payne is able to do. Like, was last year an issue of his coaching or of his players, or combination of both? Whatever, we'll find out there. Outside of that, the only one of those that's maybe a little bit surprising to me is Pitt at number 11, because this is a right now ranking, and I would have thought the Panthers would have been a bit higher on this list than they were. But hey, that is the perception, is that they haven't been great, although they were last year. All right, moving into 10 through 6. Let me reel it off for you. Number 10, Florida State. 9, Clemson. 8, Wake Forest. 7, NC State. 6, Virginia Tech. I get Florida State being ranked 10th, just kind of similar to Louisville. What happened last year? They were not good. They found more wins than the Cardinals did, but still, it was a bad year. So I can't argue with this, other than I would have them lower than Pittsburgh, who is at 11 in terms of right now. Again, Clemson at 9, Wake at 8, NC State at 7, Virginia Tech at 6. I'm not going to quibble with any of those, other than, I think Virginia Tech maybe got bumped down a little bit because they didn't have a great year. NC State, I would have actually put a little bit higher, because, again, these rankings are right now, and NC State had a pretty solid year last year. Let me rattle off next for you the top 5. Number 5, Syracuse. This is probably the biggest issue I have, is that I think Syracuse is sitting there at 5 based on tradition more than what they've actually done right now, which is what this question, again, was all about, because Syracuse is not a top 5 team in the ACC right now based on play recently, and with losing Jim Boeheim and having to upgrade a new coach from within the program there. And so for me, I'm in you got to prove it to me mode with Syracuse. So I would actually have them down more around like 10th or 11th. Probably 10th would be the orange. So that's probably the biggest misplaced team in terms of what our Locked On ACC hosts did. The top 4, I can't really fault any of these 4 being in the top 4. I think they are the best 4 programs in the ACC right now. Number 4, Virginia. 3, North Carolina. 2, Miami, and 1, Duke. Those top 3, that's the exact same that John Rothstein had on his that we looked at yesterday. When you're looking at the right nowness of this, I would almost maybe put Miami above Duke. They have been the most successful team the past couple of years, making the Elite 8 in back-to-back seasons. And I know they don't have the national or longevity notoriety that either Duke or North Carolina, or I guess Virginia as well, has. But in terms of if you're truly answering right now to this question, Miami has been more successful than Duke or Carolina. And so I would have probably jumped them up. But I know some people are probably looking ahead to this year with this question, and so I get that. And similar to yesterday with Rothstein, I would love to be able to put the Tar Heels up higher. But if I'm being asked rank all 15 ACC basketball programs right now, I don't know that I could put what Carolina did last year, or what they're, kind of doing this offseason, above Miami or Duke until we see what happens on the floor this season. And I think the homer, the fan in me could explain it away to move the Tar Heels up to 2 or even 1. But I would rather them be a little bit lower and have to fight for it and prove it and show that they can do it in the regular season, which they haven't done in a couple years. So that's where we are at. But once again, it absolutely boggles my mind that Louisville is at the bottom of this list, but it's true for the right now. They, above every other team, are going to have to come out and prove it on the court this year. If not, I think Kenny Payne might be gone after just 2 years. All right, wrapping up the show today, I've got some tidbits for you from James Okonkwo's European Championship that he's playing in right now with his home country, some baseball things to talk about, and then we'll get out of here. All of that coming up in just a second. All right, some tidbits for you at the midweek point. First off, some more basketball. The FIBA Under 20 Euro Championships are going on right now. Recent North Carolina verbal commit James Okonkwo is playing for his home country of England, the UK. And so they just wrapped up pool play on Tuesday by defeating Hungary 57-54, a really close game there. But I bring it, I know it's like, why are we talking about Great Britain basketball, especially they're playing in Division B of this thing. They're not even in the top division. Well, it's interesting and perhaps somewhat instructive to look at what Okonkwo is doing as part of his team. He's been starting every single game. He's been in that lineup doing what he needs to do to help his country. That's great news there. But beyond that, let me tell you his stats from this game. Played 34 minutes, 42 seconds, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 3 of 8 shooting, 0 of 1 from 3, 5 of 5 from the free throw line, only, quote unquote, only 4 turnovers, 1 steal, and 6 blocks. So you look at that stat line. Let me give you some things just to take away from what James Okonkwo has done in group play of this tournament. Great Britain's played 4 games. Okonkwo, Carolina Rising Junior, has had double-digit rebounds in every game. That's encouraging because rebounding is one of those traits that we talk about that translates. Okonkwo has now had a double-double, a dub-dub, as Isaac Shade calls them, in 3 of UK's 4 games. This one was 11 points, 10 rebounds. I also love to see him go 5 of 5 from the free throw line. He's not a bad free throw shooter, but he's also not a great one or solid one. I'd love to see him get up to 70% this season. 5 for 8 is a great thing. 0 of 1 from the three-point line. I talked earlier as we were talking about three-pointers that he's not really a strong three-point shooter. Only had 6 attempts in his entire West Virginia career, making 0 of them. He's had at least 1 attempt in all 4 of these FIBA games and hasn't made any. So we got to wait and see on that. I joked by saying he had only 4 turnovers. You might recall he had 8 in UK's last game, and I believe 6 the game before that. So, 4, calling that only is actually a big win. But perhaps the biggest number I want to look at and be awed by is his 6 blocks in this game. Because I think you might look at Okonkwo's height at 6'8" and think, he's not somebody that's a rim protector, and he's not in terms of the traditional meaning of the word of like, oh man, you're just this imposing figure. Dikembe Mutombo right there by the rim is going to swat your shot and wag your finger and have all these. But Okonkwo has this athletic ability, this timing to be able to go up and block a shot. And I don't care what division it is, to get 6 blocks in this game is really, really impressive there from Okonkwo. Okay, let's switch from the basketball court to the baseball diamond, where on Tuesday night, Zac Gallen started the All-Star game for the National League. Tar Heel getting that start. You love to see that. It's just great for Coach Forbes and his program and their ability to recruit. Like, hey, come here, and you might find yourself on the mound to start the All-Star game. That's a real thing. Gallen, for his actual stats that he had in this game, just pitched the first inning. All-Star game, you're trying to get multiple guys innings, but gave up just 1 hit, 0 runs, no base on balls, 1 strikeout, and did all that, got out of the inning in just 15 pitches. He had a ground out to start the game, or to start the inning, And then he struck out Shohei Ohtani. I love to see that. Gave up a single to Randy Arozarena from Tampa Bay, but then Arozarena was cut down by the Braves' Sean Murphy trying to steal and got out of the inning. And so I love this for Zac Gallen. Nice to get a pretty clean sheet performance. I know he gave up that single, but no runs, and that's always good. And folks, I just want to make sure you don't miss what a massive accomplishment this is. Gallen was the youngest NL All-Star Game starter in the last decade. Right now, he's leading the entire National League in wins above replacement WAR at 4.0. He's doing phenomenal things, and he is a Tar Heel. Speaking of the Tar Heels in Major League Baseball, UNC Baseball has had, per the Diamond Heels Twitter account, 48 draft picks in the last 8 years. Well, folks, we can make that number 51 now because we already congratulated Matt Horvath on being drafted 53rd overall by the Orioles. But now Max Carlson has gone in the 12th round to the Red Sox, followed by Tomas Frick in the 15th round to the Yankees. So would love to see those guys, Carlson and Frick, kind of come up through the rankings and then get to the majors and play each other in a Yankees versus Red Sox matchup, just going at it, that classic rivalry. Obviously, guys move around a lot as they come up through the minors and all that, but wouldn't that be a funny thing? Would love to see it. Friends, that's it for today's episode of Locked on Tar Heels. Thanks so much for tuning in. It was great to be together mid-week like this. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked on Heels. You can follow me at Isaac Shade. If you want to have more in-depth conversation, lockedontarheels@gmail.com, and would love to chat with you there. For those of you watching, please subscribe to the show, smash the like button, and leave comments on your thoughts on today's show. We will talk again, I promise you, with Pat Kilby. I've done this to us all a couple weeks recently, and so I apologize for that, but he will be with us on Thursday's episode. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel, and until we talk tomorrow, yes, it's going to be awesome, but I'll talk to you then. Peace.